Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, a game we've had circled on our calendars for a very long time. Texas A&M, and I think a lot of college football fans across the country, whether you're a Texas fan, Texas A&M fan, or just fired up to watch this game, you were kind of hoping for it to look like this. This is a matchup where not only it's a rivalry football game, I mean you have legitimate SEC championship implications on the line. You have college football playoff implications on the line. For college football fans, it doesn't get much better than this. And it's going to be maybe the best environment we see all year in College Station, Saturday night. Fired up for it. Now, before we get into it, as always, I'm on Twitter. I'm on the message boards. A lot of bad blood between these two fan bases. That's what makes college football great. Let it fly in the comments section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Dill, without further ado, let's get into this one. I'm going to start with kind of some groundbreaking analysis. Texas A&M on offense, they're just going to have to make plays. When we do these preview prediction episodes, we're looking at both of these teams and trying to figure out how these two teams stack up against one another, where some of the weaknesses are for both units. I look at this Texas defense, and as much as the national media wants to talk about Quinn Ewers, wants to talk about Coach Sark, the reason this Texas team is one of the most dangerous teams in the country is this defense might be the best defense in the country. You look at the numbers and say 12.1 points per game allowed. That's number 3 in the country. 3.8 yards per play. That's number 1 in the country. This is one of, if not the best defenses in the country. They're very good against the run. They're only giving up 5.1 yards per pass attempt in the pass. That's number 1 in the country. There's just not many holes with this Texas defense. So if you're Texas A&M, you can talk about scheme all you want. To me, I look at this game and say, you got to have your playmakers play their best football and make big plays. Guys like Noah Thomas and Johnny Walker, we've seen both of those kids and a lot of other guys like Terry Bussey, obviously Marcel Reed, some really talented individuals on this Texas A&M offense. Have they always been consistently great? Probably not. They're going to have to be great Saturday night if you want to beat a Texas team that's a lead on defense. Where do you see and how do you see this matchup shaking out here?
Well, and that's one encouraging thing I think for this Texas A&M team is I think that second half of the game and maybe even into the second quarter of that Auburn game was probably as effective as I've seen that offense in terms of just an execution standpoint, right? Like the ball being accurate, getting out on time, wide receivers being open, just like a well-executed passing attack. Now, I would like to see them run the ball better, especially from the running back position. I think since Le'Veon Moss has been out, that's certainly been a bit of an issue because he was kind of their guy, if you will, and they really haven't quite replaced that production. But if you can execute through the air, again, you can move the ball. And it's tough. It's tough sledding on Texas. They don't have that matchup let's go try to exploit this. Because you're right. They're really good at all 3 levels. That interior defensive line has played far better than I think most people thought, certainly than I thought. But they're getting some dominant play from certain guys, some from that linebacker room, from that edge room, and they're just no holes.
And there's a couple matchups that I'm looking at in this football game. It starts with, look, we know what Texas A&M wants to do on offense. They want to run the football, push the ball down the field, try to hit explosive plays through the air. They run the football almost 60% of the time. That's top 20 in the country. And then when they do want to throw, they want to be aggressive down the field. Marcel Reed's average depth of target's 11 yards. 17% of his dropbacks are throws 20-plus yards down the field. Last year, this would be a concern if you were a Texas fan because that secondary really struggled giving up explosive plays. They don't give you anything cheap. And that's kind of why it starts with, hey, guys like Johnny Walker, Noah Thomas, when you have the opportunity to make plays on the football, you're just going to have to go out and win. And we've seen them do that at times. They're going to need to do it Saturday night. Then the other storyline is how well and how does Texas A&M decide to run the football? It's not going to change. You're still going to see Texas A&M lean on this ground attack. It's going to be really hard to run some base run scheme on Texas. Inside zone, some power that they like to go to. They're just really good in the front 7. They're one of those units that it's hard to run against. You're going to have to get creative. Now, good thing for Texas A&M, one, Coach Colin Klein, we've seen some really good games called, even going back to him at Kansas State, of getting creative with the rushing attack. You have a dynamic quarterback in Marcel Reed. In my mind, of Texas A&M, and I don't think Texas A&M runs the football for 250 yards in this football game. I think Texas is just too good in the front 7. Can you run it effectively enough to just keep this offense on schedule, avoid staying in those third and long situations where Marcel Reed needs to just be a pocket passer, which he's gotten better at. It's probably not where you want to be operating exclusively in this game. Can you run the ball good enough where you can stay on schedule and keep that offense open is probably the storyline I'm looking at.
Yeah, because also if they get into a pure like, okay, we're just going to be dropping back and pass, I don't know that that's where Texas A&M's
No,
offense
they don't.
thrives necessarily. Like I
Right.
thought Crownover struggled a little bit against really athletic edge rushers. You look at Texas, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, like they have some real athlete track stars on that defensive end position, and that could be a problem. So again, you look like I'm wondering if they can get like a little extra creative, if you will, in terms of using Terry Bussey. Like, can they go to some two back stuff, some other like again, just something to kind of throw something at Texas that they haven't seen? Because it's like you kind of said it, when you play those great defenses, you probably need a few wrinkles to throw at them with that they haven't seen.
Especially when you play an aggressive defense like Texas. Like they want to fire downhill. So can you give them some pre-snap motion? Can you give them some eye candy in the backfield, some misdirection to scheme it up in the run game? That's kind of what you're looking to do. Last really intriguing storyline, Dale, we've seen Marcel Reed be super dangerous using his legs, getting outside the pocket, whether it's scrambling, whether it's keeping his eyes down the field and pushing it. Texas got an answer here. And this makes you feel pretty good if you're a Texas fan. I don't think there's a better run and chase quarterback spy linebacker than Anthony Hill. This is going to be a massive storyline in this game. How do you keep Marcel Reed in the pocket? How do you try to take Marcel Reed's athleticism out of this football game? Having a backer like Anthony Hill is a very good place to start. And I'm kind of interested to see how Texas decides to go about dealing with Marcel Reed and what he can do as an athlete. Flipping the sides here, Dill, Texas just seems to be stuck in neutral on offense. And look, I'm a Michigan fan. I would take Texas's offense in a freaking heartbeat. But for Texas fans, you kind of get that feeling where there's been opportunities for Texas to really pour it on, and you haven't really seen that. And go back to the Arkansas game or even Kentucky last night. Can Texas find that gear? Can they put it into drive against Texas A&M? That's kind of what I'm looking at. And Dill, you look at this Texas A&M defense, can they just play up to their potential on paper? This is a unit that I think can be a top 10 unit in the country. They haven't always played like that. How do you see this Texas offense versus Texas A&M defense playing out here?
Well, I mean, I think one thing that's kind of helped the fact, if you will, that Texas's probably passing attack hasn't quite caught its stride is their ability to run the ball physically in between the tackles. I think is much better than I kind of thought, especially with some of the injuries at the running back spot coming in. You kind of felt like that might be an issue. But Wisner, I think, has really played well as just a pure runner of the ball. I think he runs physically. I think he's got good contact balance, makes guys miss in the hole. And their offensive line, I think, is just playing really well on the ground. So I look like Texas can get really dangerous if they can start being explosive through the air again, similar to like what they were last year. I mean, you look, even the fact that Gunnar Helms leading them in yards or receiving yards is not probably the ideal stat you'd probably want if you're Texas. You'd want Isaiah Bond, Matt Golden, some of those, even a guy like a Wingo to probably be more productive than they've been. But at the end of the day, there's a very high floor on this Texas offense because they can run the ball and kind of control the games like Michigan did last year. And that's not something you necessarily think of when you think of coach teams, but they have that in their bag.
I think if there's one thing to be really optimistic for if you're a Texas fan is you got the offensive line to deal with these dudes. There's just not many offensive lines that you can say I feel confident blocking out Texas A&M. I was critical of the Texas offensive line after the Georgia game, and I didn't even think they were great against Vanderbilt. The last couple of weeks, they've been back to like the best offensive line in the country. They're playing their best football when it matters. Like when you're going on the road in this kind of environment where it's going to be really hard to hear the snaps and Texas A&M is going to throw a lot of different looks at you, that's another storyline. And Texas A&M got really creative with the pressure packages in that second half against Auburn, and it worked. Like a lot of overload pressures. If you're Texas, this unit's played a lot of football together. And it's a very gelled, high chemistry unit. You're going to need to be because Texas A&M is going to test that communication in terms of pressure pickups. You feel good Texas can handle that.
And Quinn Ewers in chaos has not been probably as good as you'd like to see him towards the end of the stretch. And we saw some good moments like in the Michigan game where, again, some pressure around him, steps up, evades pressure, makes good plays. You've seen some bad plays now, a couple games under pressure. You've seen some sacks being taken, some interceptions, like those type of things that, again, when you're a Texas and you're kind of rolling through these teams, they've allowed teams to kind of hang in those games because they have made too many mistakes. So, if Texas A&M can get after them up front, Quinn Ewers, like that's still probably where you want to get him to because he
And
has.
getting after for Texas A&M is huge for a couple of different reasons. One, we've seen them be really disruptive, but we haven't seen them create a ton of negative plays at times. You go back to that South Carolina game, like you had Lenore Sellers dead to rights a couple of different times. You could say the same thing about Peyton Thorne last night, and you're not coming up with some of those key negative plays that kill off drives. And Quinn Ewers, we kind of know a very talented quarterback, but we've seen him take some negative plays. He's not the greatest at avoiding and evading pressure. When you have the opportunity to bring Quinn Ewers down, you have to and create those negative plays. Last storyline for me, yards after the catch. When Texas A&M's defense has been like Jekyll and Hyde this year. You've seen some really dominant performances. You've also seen some really bad performances. When they're playing bad, tackling in space is a massive problem. And Texas is a yards after the catch offense. Like Coach Sark is going to scheme it up so his players get the football in space. Texas A&M has given up over 1,200 yards after the catch this year. That is not a good number. You got to be able to tackle these guys with the football in their hands. If you can do that and you can bring Quinn Ewers down and create negative plays, I think you put yourself in a decent spot. Getting into the pick here, Texas -5 points heading into this one. Who you got?
Yeah, I'd lean Texas. And it just comes down to the fact that I think they have a multitude of ways to win football games. Like what I
Yeah,
said, like I think there's still a gear they can get to in the passing attack if they really had to be a little bit more explosive and take more chances. I just think again, when you're playing the way they're playing on defense and you're running the ball the way they've been able to run the ball the past couple games, you don't really need to take those chances. So again, they can suck the life out of the teams like what Michigan used to do in 2023. I still think if they have to go score a bunch of points, I think they have that in their bag of tricks, if you will, or they're in their capability. I just think their ability to win the games in a bunch of different ways sets them up well to play these big spots.
it gives. Yeah, I think I agree with that. Like last year, there wasn't a ton of different ways Texas could win. This year, like they can play that ugly, gritty game where they run the football and lean on their defense. They also can win the shootouts, and that helps. The more different ways you feel comfortable winning, the better. I'm going to go Texas A&M for a couple of different reasons. Dale, one, give me a touchdown in a rivalry game at home. I'll take that every single day of the week. I think secondly, we've seen Texas A&M in these spots a lot. Like they are a battle-tested unit that is used to being in these kind of games in the third and fourth quarter. For Texas, you haven't seen that all that much. And I think even Texas fans would maybe agree that when you've seen them get tested, I don't know if they've played their best football. And so for that reason, at home for Texas A&M, a team that has, time and time again kind of gone through these battles, give me Texas A&M to at least the very least keep this game close and potentially win it. Going to be a blast of a game. Let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.